Stephen Ross is an American real estate billionaire. He started out as a tax attorney before founding Related Companies in 1972 with the help of a $10,000 loan from family after being fired from his job at Bear Stearns. According to Forbes' 2023 billionaire listing, his net worth was $11.6 billion. His company is behind the Hudson Yards in New York City, which opened to the public in March of 2019. See what a small debt of $10,000 in 1972 turned into? Neil Bloom is another American real estate billionaire. After law school, he worked as an attorney in Chicago, then co-founded JMB Realty in 1970. According to Forbes' 2023 billionaire listing, his net worth was $6 billion. In an interview with Forbes, he was quoted as once saying, "There was a time when his credit card was his net worth, but this is America, anything is possible." But first, please note, this is not financial or investment advice. This video is meant for entertainment purposes only. If you need help with your finances or investments, please find and speak with a professional financial advisor. Now, with that behind us, let's move on. Debt is a tool to be used and not a weapon to take out its users. Unfortunately, debt has gotten a bad rap from people who have misused it, then turned around to convince the rest of the world that debt is bad. In fact, debt is so useful. That is why one of your most valuable assets is your credit score or your credit history. And by the way, never cancel your oldest credit card. Simply reduce the limit if you must. Something else you may not know is that most rich people, like your favorite celebrities, have some form of debt, like a mortgage or an investment loan. You don't expect that celebrities like Oprah, Larry Ellison, LeBron James, Ellen DeGeneres, Beyonce and Jay-Z, Mark Zuckerberg are dropping cash whenever they pick up a new trophy property, do you? Debt also allows you to create a credit history, something many employers require to hire these days. So, unless you were born with a silver spoon or started a company that was wildly successful overnight, debt can be a very effective tool to build wealth, used right, of course. So here's why you should use debt. The first reason why you should use debt is debt allows you to leverage or use a small amount of your own money to increase your asset base. Leverage simply means to use something to maximize your advantage. Think of buying a house, for instance. Let's assume you want to buy a house for $400,000 with a down payment of 20%. That makes your mortgage the 80% of the cost of the property. This would mean you're able to acquire a $400,000 asset with only $80,000 of your own money by borrowing the difference of $320,000. Not many people can afford to come up with a full amount of money required to buy a house or such big assets outright. So debt enables you to increase your asset base or your capital base. Secondly, use debt to create an infinite money glitch. One of the most effective uses of debt is it allows the wealthy, and now you, to create an infinite money glitch once you acquire a large asset such as a property. Here's how it works. Once you've paid down debt on a property for a while, you can now use it as security to borrow fairly cheaply, and this is what the wealthy do. You can also use part of the equity in your house as the value of the property increases and you pay down the mortgage to fund additional investments through tools such as a HELOC. That's a home equity line of credit. The rich do this all the time. We complain about the wealthy having an unfair advantage in building wealth because of the power of their large capital assets and their ability to better weather tough economic times. Well, the wealthy do not have a patent on debt now, do they? In fact, debt is quite accessible to most people in the developed world, and that is the key to building your own capital base that would enable you to expedite the growth of your wealth and better withstand challenging economic times. Now, before we go to number 3, let's briefly look at the relationship between debt and national wealth. The US is the wealthiest and only the second most indebted country in the world in terms of GDP after Japan. Japan has a higher national debt than the US at nearly 260% of its annual gross domestic product or GDP. The US national debt stood at over $34 trillion in early January of 2024, according to fiscal data in the Department of the Treasury and the Bureau of Fiscal Services. $34 trillion is roughly the value of the economies of China, Germany, Japan, India, and the United Kingdom combined. On the flip side, let's also remember that based on GDP, the US is the richest and the largest economy in the world. It is also home to the highest number of millionaires and billionaires according to Forbes, with nearly 25 million millionaires. The The US also has the highest number of billionaires at 735, according to the Forbes billionaire listing of 2023. Might this be a testament to the correlation between debt and wealth creation? The ease of access to debt in the US and other developed nations? Well, there's some food for thought. Back to why you should embrace debt. The third reason to embrace debt is that interest on debt is tax deductible. This makes debt a cheap source of financing, especially for businesses, but also individuals. You can write off the interest on borrowed money for many different purposes. If you borrow money to invest and generate income, such as dividends or even interest income, you can deduct the interest that you're charged on the borrowed capital when you file taxes. This makes debt cheaper because while you can use debt to buy an asset and write off the interest, you can invest your own money in the markets and grow your capital. In the US, you can deduct mortgage interest on your primary residence and even on a second home, I believe. Interest on your student loan is also tax deductible. Interest on a business loan, including credit card interest, is also deductible. Now that is cheap money. The fourth reason to use debt is time. Debt makes efficient use of time in wealth building. There is a financial principle known as the time value of money, TVM. The time value of money states that the value of $1 today is worth more than the value of $1 in the future. The idea holds true because money today can be invested and theoretically grow into a larger amount in the future. Debt allows you to grow your wealth exponentially in a short time. Think of it, the average age of a millionaire in the US is 57 years old, having built their wealth slowly and worked hard for decades. But think of how much faster a person can grow wealth with a large sum of money in their hands if they did not have to spend years or decades fast saving and growing their money in order to start investing. Debt, therefore, makes use of time very efficient used right. So bearing in mind that time is always at a premium, you can save your way to the full price of a house while trying to beat inflation and the fast-paced economic growth, or you can get your hands on 5% down payment and find the fast bank that will work with you and you can borrow the 95%. This way, 20 years from now, you can simply collect your windfall from the growth in equity thanks to inflation, population growth, which will increase the value of your property and increase productivity fueled by advances in technology. The fifth reason to use debt is that you're basically using free money to build wealth when you borrow during times of inflation. In an economy where interest rates are below inflation, which is the economic environment in which most Western nations have operated until the last 3 years, borrowed money is principally free money. That's why the wealthy borrow when they have access to so much cash. They are wealthy, right? They can sell stock or some of their assets to access cash easily. But why liquidate assets with potential for greater return in the future when you can borrow money for free today? See how the rich think? Here's how it would work, for instance. Think of Joe Rich with total wealth of say $100 million and he wants to buy property when interest rates are as low as 2% with inflation at about 3%. That would make his borrowing rate 1% below inflation. In theory, that's equivalent to free money. Then Joe would turn around and negotiate a rate of say 3.5% with his bank in order to invest 40 million of his 100 million. And because the bank wants his business and also because the bank wants to establish a good long-term relationship with him, they give him the 3.5% on his 40 million investment. Alternatively, Joe could invest his cash in the stock market and get an average return of say 8%. According to SoFi, the average return on the S&P 500 for the years 1993 to about 2023 is 9.9%. Now, in this case, if he invested in the market, Joe Rich just acquired a property at zero cost and made a net return of about 6% on his cash, adjusted for inflation. It's because of such possibilities and opportunities that the rich will continue to use debt to grow their wealth. So don't listen to those suffering from long PTSD, from debt troubles they ran into while they were still young and reckless. Keep you from growing your wealth fast by increasing your asset base and investing with free money where opportunities exist. Here are some steps to minimize your risk when working with debt. In order to effectively use debt, you also need to be smart and hedge against the possible downside risks as much as possible. Use debt strategically to grow assets and income, not for consumption. Use debt to buy your home, for instance, or acquire property. That's good use of debt. Use debt to invest. Let me explain. Taking on an investment loan in order to make a contribution, say, to your tax-sheltered account so that you can turn around and pay part of the loan with the tax refund that you get can be good use of debt. Borrow to educate yourself within reason. Borrowing $1 million in student debt is highly questionable use of debt. Borrowing to buy consumer goods, absolutely a fool's errand. Secondly, when borrowing large sums of money, for instance to buy a home, choose a fixed rate during periods of low interest rates to minimize the risk of possible interest rate increases down the line. The last 3 years should serve as a cautionary tale if nothing else. Thirdly, low interest rates are not always the best term or condition of a loan agreement. You should consider other terms such as favorable prepayment conditions without huge penalties. Fourthly, just because your bank is happy to lend you a large sum of money does not mean you should accept it all. Look at your cash flow and make sure you can adequately service your debt. Also consider the stability of your source of income. Fifth, if borrowing to invest, it's important that you understand your risk tolerance or your comfort level with risk, especially if borrowing to invest in the stock market, because volatility is a natural part of the stock market and can last for extended periods at a time. Finally, remember, if you do not trust your discipline with debt, you should stay away from it altogether. Over-leveraging carries with it a risk that a loan could be called in at the most inopportune time, so be smart and make sure to minimize your downside. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you for watching.